Jaylen Brown has been on a different planet than anybody else, really, since the start of the season. He has been not just an all-star, an all-NBA guy. He's leading his team kind of like an MVP right now, and he's been scoring the hell out of the basketball, coming off a 31-point night in Detroit in 35 minutes. Of course, we go back to the Memphis game, 42, his career high, 29 minutes. The last 4 games, 20 points, 42, 25, 31. Jaylen Brown has been utterly ridiculous. And Chris, when you happen to draft 2 wing guys back-to-back, 3rd overall, like the Celtics did, back when Jayson and Jaylen were both drafted. This is exactly what it looks like if it goes really well, no?
Yeah, completely. I mean, for a long time, I think a lot of people viewed Jaylen as that perfect complementary guy. And I totally understand that because that really is what he was. And there's a lot of holes in his game. And it wasn't really, well-rounded enough to be the guy potentially. But my God, he has really, really rounded out his game nicely. He has so many different ways of scoring now. He is a very, very, very confident ball handler all of a sudden. He's a pretty solid. I mean, he's running pick and roll possessions with unbelievable confidence, which if I had told you that after his rookie year, even at the beginning of last season, you probably would have told me I was insane. But like you said, I mean, this second game against Detroit was once again, he just really unconscious from the floor. 31 points. Yeah, he had 6 turnovers, but I mean, you'll take it when he's 13 to 16 from the floor. So really, really remarkable. The improvements that he continues to make every single year are just incredible. And I've been long on the train of, I wouldn't give him up in a James Harden trade. And this just further backs that up because his growth is undeniable.
We're way away where that's not even a discussion anymore, I don't think. Again, as good as James Harden is, I'm not trying to say James Harden's a bad player, but Jaylen is the complete package of what you're looking for, both on court, off court, how he vibes with Jayson Tatum and everything. He's a guy that you want to be one of the faces of your franchise. But with Jaylen specifically, and we'll get to all the layers of Jaylen. But the thing that I got to tell, the confidence that he currently has in his whole offensive repertoire is something we haven't seen. I mean, this is what you notice of the great people from the good players, great players, and there's the elite players who have this otherworldly confidence that just like a LeBron who just knows he can score wherever he wants every single time on the floor. Jaylen's confidence right now, and it came out in that Memphis game where he's hitting pull-up threes in front of Valanciunas. He's putting guys in the blender and pulling up in their face and burying them with a routine. And it's just carried over the past couple of games. And when he's that confident and he has the ability to take over games for stretches like that, Boston can survive if, he's low on the floor with Grant Williams and Jeff Teague and whatever concoction Brad Stevens wants to throw out there. Jaylen is proving right now, Chris, that he can handle the offense all by himself. And without this, Chris, I don't know where the Celtics are.
Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable that he's made this kind of progress, like we mentioned before, but it's even bigger for the Celtics considering the situation they're in, right? They're trying to survive this period without Kemba, and they're really trying to survive these non-Tatum minutes when Tatum's not in the game and Kemba's on the shelf. Like, this is huge. The fact that they can rely on Jaylen to kind of carry the load like that, you would have never expected that a couple years ago. You're talking about his confidence and just his assertiveness with the ball. It all starts with his confidence with the ball in his hands, because that was the issue earlier in his career. You were always a little uneasy when he'd put the ball on the floor, and you'd kind of get that tunnel vision, go to the hoop a little bit when he did put it on the floor, and you just didn't really know where it was going to go. Now he has that confidence as a ball handler. He's confidence as a playmaker, and it just translates to the rest of his offensive game and makes everything so smooth. So it allows him to, operate patiently, comfortably in a pick and roll, allows him to get around that, 18-foot mark and pull up in the mid-range where it feels like he hasn't missed a mid-range jumper in, my God, like 2 weeks at this point, it feels like. So he's so confident. He can score in so many different ways right now. And that well-rounded offensive game, like I said before, I mean, for the situation that the Celtics are in, trying to kind of patch this together a little bit until they can get Kemba back and until they can kind of figure some things out, it's really, really massive. And that's going to help them, stay afloat for the next month or so for sure.
you think about Gordon Hayward leaving. What is he,
Right.
what void do you have to fill, right? Because you don't just have to, you got to fill, 20 points a game, how many is whatever. And his role on the floor is a unique one as a wing creator. And that's exactly what Jaylen is doing. Gordon left, and it really left a huge void as a creator, whether it was to come from Smart or Teague or wherever. I don't think a lot of us expected it to come from Jaylen Brown. I'll give some people some credit. I was on a podcast, the ATO show, which I know a lot of you listen to, and my buddy, Lucky Spike recommended that. He's like, Jalen's going to average 4.5 assists this year, and I was like, you're absolutely nuts. There's no way Jaylen Brown is going to average 4.5 assists this year. Well, I'm already eating my words because it looks like it's at least possible he could have reached that number at some point in his life. And we've talked about a few things, but his ability to all of a sudden turn into this playmaker who can make cross-court passes on the move with either hand. Like, I don't know where this came from, how he found, because I talked about this before. There was a shortened offseason. When did Jaylen find time to do this? And I know there's a Brad Stevens quote somewhere about, Jaylen asked to have more on his plate, so we gave it to him, and he's clearly showing us early that he was worthy of said increase in responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely impressive for a guy his age. I mean, he's mature beyond his years. We all know that. But the fact that a young player can step up his role that quickly, like you said, shortened offseason, shortened training camp, shortened preseason, whatever, it's remarkable for someone to do that with a full offseason. Jaylen was able to do that basically in a couple months. It's really impressive because, again, that wasn't really part of his game just a few years ago. So the fact that, he's been able to work his tail off and be able to step up and fill that responsibility is huge. He's someone who wants that full plate. Like Brad said, he wants a full plate. And I mean, I expected him to take a little bit of a jump forward just because no Kemba, no Gordon for at least the time being. I mean, you're going to ask Jaylen to step up a little bit, but the fact that he's been able to do that is pretty remarkable in the short period of time he's been able to do that. And I think it goes without saying, but Tatum's taken a jump too. You look at him today, I think he finished with 12 assists. So yeah, 12 assists. So, I mean, that is like, to have him be able to be that playmaker alongside Jaylen while Jaylen is maybe taking the scoring load a little bit more today, like, that's huge. So the way they're able to work off each other comfortably and just kind of let that role flow back and forth is really, really major for the Celtics offense, because again, it's not always going to be very smooth over the next month to 2 months. So to be able to rely on those two guys to fill whatever role is needed is massive for Brad Stevens and co.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Jaylen Brown is he's hunting his shot, right?
Yeah.
You can see it, like, as soon as he gets the ball, there's not a lot of wasted movement anymore. He knows there's a couple of spots all good NBA players know their favorite spots on the floor. It's how can you get to that spot to give yourself a good shot? And Jaylen Brown right now knows where his spots on the floor. You talked about his mid-range game right now. It's on fire. He's ridiculous. He reminds me a little bit of DeRozan in the mid-range, where it's like if he gets a step by you, he can put you on his back hip if he needs to. Will just rise up and fire and hit that shot. And it looks so smooth. He's like floating in air half the time. And that's my favorite thing about Jaylen Brown. But you mentioned, him and Jayson. Those two guys are like almost 60 points a game between the two of them right now, in the 50s to 60s, which is absolutely ridiculous. And what the best part is, when you have Tatum, who is commanding a lot of attention as a ball handler right now. I mean, everybody's doubling him all over the place, trying to cause turnovers. And, Jayson's still making his way through that. But the fact is that you have a guy like Jaylen Brown who can help bail you out when you need to find the outlet to get rid of it, when the double comes. And he can basically just initiate any offense from anywhere. I mean, these two guys, you look at the way they've grown together over the years, and, Jaylen's leap always comes in the offseason, and Tatum's usually comes in the middle of the season. I don't know what we're looking at, Chris, in 3 months from now, if everything goes as smooth as we think it should. But these two guys are operating on a whole different level at the age of 25 and 23, respectively.
Yeah, completely. I mean, if you're looking for that Tatum leap in the middle of the season, it might not be as massive as him, scoring that ridiculous stretch of games last February, but you're going to look for him to get to the line a little bit more, because it's been talked about endlessly at this point, but you'd like him to get to the line a little bit more. And if you do notice that bump in the middle of the season where, hey, Tatum decided to take that leap, look, he's scoring 30 a game all of a sudden, there's a good chance he's getting to the line. And, 5 to 10 of those points are coming from the free throw line, just because you look at superstars and that's where a decent amount of their points come from. So that's probably going to contribute to some, bit of the leap if he does make one midseason. But yeah, I mean, today was a perfect example. Today we're recording this on Sunday, so his second game in Detroit. It was a perfect example of Tatum taking the double teams that Detroit is throwing at him, the traps that Detroit is throwing at him, and he takes his time, he makes the smart read, and he finds the open man, which was often Jaylen. I mean, that is so unbelievable that you can have a guy who's a unbelievable scorer take a step back, realize that, hey, they're throwing endless traps at me here. I'm going to make the right read and I'm going to find the hot hand. I'm going to find Jaylen, or really the open man at all. He found Tice a couple times tonight. He was really great seeing the floor. So that combination is just huge because, again, if it's just Tatum trying to make the right read when he's getting doubled and you don't have another guy who you can really rely on outside of that, then that's where you run into problems. They've really come to be able to rely on Jaylen Brown much more so than I expected. I knew you could rely on him to a point, but my God, I mean, on the ball, he's been much better. So yeah, that combination has been great. One thing in terms of, if we're talking mid-season leaps or improvements, you can't really nitpick with Jaylen Brown right now. So this is just me noticing one thing. In the second half, he has the hot hand all first half, right? And then the Celtics are running into a little bit of a stagnant stretch in the fourth quarter, late third quarter. You'd like to see him maybe be a little more aggressive off the ball and coming to get the ball because he's the hot hand. So you gotta get him as many touches as possible. And there were times as this game was coming down the stretch where you'd be like, oh, I'd like to see Jaylen get a couple more touches. So maybe that goes both ways. It's him being aggressive and it's also his teammates looking to get him more touches down the stretch. But that is a very, very small request when you've got a guy scoring essentially 30 a game right now. So 28 a game, I think it is through 7. But yeah, they've been awesome.